Hello.
Hi. It's been so long
It
since
has
I saw
been,
you at breakfast this morning.
yes, it's been 5 minutes. So hello, everybody. This is the first of hopefully many lovely chats about what it's like to be a healer, what it's like to be a therapist, a coach, a trainer, somebody who's trying to help other people with their health and well-being and their awakening. And the first person that I wanted to interview is my partner. He's my business partner. He's my life partner. He's my best friend. And I think he's really fascinating. And I know a lot of people find his story of how he became a healer to be really interesting. So I wanted to begin here. So, hi, Noah. Would you just tell us who you are, what you do, where you came from?
Oh gosh, so many ways to go with that. My name is Noah Drucker, and I am with the host here in Denver, Colorado. And we have a clinic, Denver Pain and Performance Solutions, that we jointly started, 5 years ago now? Yeah. And I do a variety of forms of work, hands-on manual therapy, neurological work, tissue work, emotional trauma work via a form of hypnotherapy, cellular release therapy. What else do I do? I function as a spiritual counselor for many people, both sort of overtly and also just as a matter of practice in counseling people during the work that we do. Because our work naturally takes a transpersonal or spiritual approach. And yeah, mostly what I do is listen to people and love them. Yeah, and that looks different in a lot of different situations, but that's probably the number one thing.
Is this what you wanted to do when you were little?
No, I wanted to be a football player. After the ballet didn't work out for me. That's a joke. I did want to be an athlete, and I was a football player until I was 28 years old. And looking back on that time in my life, I see that as a big necessary learning curve about how not to go about living one's life. It was a lot of my own sort of ego desire and using willpower to muscle my way through life, literally and metaphorically. And I'm super grateful for the experiences, and it's certainly been a part of my journey, but was never really what I was supposed to be doing or meant to do. And it was really actually after I retired that I realized all of this interesting alternative self-care that I'd been pursuing as an athlete, trying to keep myself healthy, was something that I had a real interest in. And so that's when I first got the bug that maybe this was something I could do. And of course, that's changed so many times in the last, 7, 8 years. I guess it's probably 10 years now that I've been sort of in the field. When I first went to massage therapy school to become licensed to touch, trained as an active release techniques therapist, and then all of the evolution that has occurred since then in the work. But no, it's not something I wanted to do, although in retrospect, I do recognize that it was trying to come up in me when I was young. I used to really think, gosh, wouldn't it be amazing if I could just like put my hands on people and make them feel better? And then, of course, the rational mind gets in the way, and I just dismissed that as being silly or having read one too many fantasy books about magical people with healing abilities and delusions of Gandalf and all of that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Was there one moment or a couple moments when you look back now where you realized, oh, this is what I'm actually meant to do?
Yes. There was one moment where it's hard to explain what took place. Nothing took place. Everything took place. It wasn't some sort of big moment in the world, so to speak. It was just this quiet knowing. I remember where I was sitting, where I was having coffee, was married at the time, and said to my now ex-wife, I really think I'm going to go to massage school. Like, this really feels right. And I didn't really have a rationale or an explanation. And I don't remember where that bug first crept up that I started researching it. But I do remember the exact moment when I knew I was going to go in that direction. And it was a pretty big commitment for me. I was working full time actually, as a high school administrator with pretty busy hours. And so for me, it was, I was driving an hour south to Colorado Springs, like 2 or 3 nights a week to take class from like 5 until 11 p.m. And it was a big commitment. And so I felt into, am I sure about this? And I don't remember what the signs, so to speak, were, but there were 2 or 3 as I was contemplating this and really deepening into my certainty that this is the direction I was going to go, where the universe did provide some kind of feedback. And I went, okay, I guess I'm going to do this. But mostly it was that one moment where I just realized there was just some deep inner knowing that this was the direction I needed to go. And, it's a very, very complicated process called listening to your heart. I mean, that's really what it is. You hear about it all the time, and then it happens and you go, oh, that's
Yes.
what that feels like. I want to do something from within me, and it feels really powerful and important, and I don't know why, and I don't care. I'm just going to do it and listen.
What was it like for you to be in massage school? What was that whole experience like?
Yeah, it was it was interesting in so many different ways. There were 15, I think there were 15 of us in the class, and I was the only male. So that was interesting. Yeah, it was a good learning experience. I went into it, I think, with a little bit of, or a lot of ego, hubris, thinking this isn't what I want to do. I'm better than massage. This isn't really, I don't want to be just some massage therapist. There's all of these fancy things that I want to do with this and blah, blah, blah. And it was invaluable for me, in terms of checking my ego at the door and realizing in massage school, oh, there's a lot that I don't know, and I actually really need this. Just this time, putting my hands on people, working with a body, and then of course in retrospect, knowing it's really also very much working with energy and feeling the relationship between 2 people, especially when one of you is naked and there's a lot to kind of feel through, no pun intended. And it was a really important piece of the process for me. And I was still in massage school when I realized what was happening, that I'd carried a lot of misconceptions or preconceptions and sort of ego into the process, and began to really just enjoy learning how to be with another human being in a relatively intimate setting, an energetically intimate setting, and be comfortable with that and learn the way around the body and learn the way around the energy system. And it was really important. And because I was going off on my own and starting a business, I was also willing to do whatever it took to be successful. And so really for the first, I don't even know how long, but first good chunk of time, 6 months to a year maybe, I was a massage therapist. I was doing a lot of massage. I was doing some active release techniques as well, but I came to really enjoy just being able to work with somebody and provide what they need in that moment, and use whatever form was present there as a mechanism to love them and listen to them and take care of them.
When did you first begin to feel energy or work with energy consciously?
Mostly I blame that on you.
I know this, but thought it would be a fun question.
Yeah, I'm sure that you do. I'm sure that you did think it would be a fun question. It was when you and I, consciously working with energy. it being the key. In retrospect, obviously, I can remember how I was doing that in unconscious, subtle ways. But it was at some point in our training in PDTR, which itself presents as a very rigid, rules-based system of neurology. And that might be true also. In fact, you made me that wonderful t-shirt that says, "I love rules." And when I was still locked in my rigid masculinity and masculine energy, I did love rules, and now I can take them or leave them. But it was in that process of trying to reconcile this really rigid rules-based system with what we were seeing and feeling. And again, you were certainly the leader in that. And as I've said to you many times, and I will say again now, it's because you're the bravest person I know. And you just said, "Screw it, I'm gonna dive in." And I actually remember one moment in particular where we were trying to, map out some neurological puzzle and, find all of the pieces of it. And you just sort of like held your hand out, and I was like, "What the hell are you doing? Follow the rules. Just do this, 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 and you'll find it." And you looked at me and you were like, "I know. I want to know if I can feel it." And I was like, just blown away by that. Mostly upset. How dare you take away the rules? There's a system, damn it. And so it was that moment that stands out, and really just a lot of those moments in going through that work, specifically doing that work with you, and the way that we began to sort of practice and explore. That was the first, and it's still a process for me. I still think of you as the more kind of intuitive person when it comes to working with and feeling energy in that way. I am very conscious of it now, but there's still a lot of moments where I'm sort of feeling into, what the hell am I doing right now? How did I get here? Am I feeling for this or that, or I don't know.
I mean, I have those moments too.
Oh, whatever. You're not.
I do. Where I'm
know
like,
you do.
what?
I know you do.
Just because of the structure of the background that I have.
Yes.
Where, as a PT, you're expected to follow evidence-based protocols.
Right.
If you want to have a practice.
Right.
So,
yes.
Okay. So besides, learning how to work with energy consciously and feeling comfortable and relaxed when doing that, what else has been hard for you along the way?
Oh, geez. How much time do we have?
Lots.
Well, the other side of that feeling into energy, the letting go of forms, or the worship of forms, really is what it is, because I do still use forms in my work. But it was letting go of the worship of forms as the source of the healing themselves that was really difficult. And it's only recently that I think it's occurred to me, oh gosh, I don't think I really have that anymore. I don't really feel that come up, at least not very often or very powerfully.
So by forms, you mean modalities?
So by forms, I mean specific modalities, specific ways of working, not just in the expressive material sense, but also the forms in the mind of what's happening when we're working with a client and when healing is taking place. And we spend all of this time, energy, money on our training. I've gone through massage school, thousands of dollars on ART certifications, 3 or 4 modules of neurokinetic therapy. What was it? 24 trips to Oakland over a period of 2 years, learning and then assisting and teaching PDTR, to say nothing of all of the books and
hypnotherapy classes too.
The hypnotherapy classes, 9 straight days of that. And, each one of these forms has value. It has some truth. It has some way of allowing and helping energy to move and provide healing, but none of them are God,
Mm.
right? But we have a tendency to, and I can mean that both literally and metaphorically, take your pick. And we have a tendency to develop a worship for the specific form. And gosh, we've seen it so much in the communities that we're a part of.
Mhm.
You know, God forbid you stretch a psoas, because that breaks a big rule in one of these particular
Yeah.
forms and modalities. And then, but that's not true in another one, and that other one has its own set of rules and rigid structures. And what was most difficult for me, because it's my natural inclination to be that left brain, I was a math science guy, order and structure to the universe. I love rules. It's on my t-shirt. Um, to let go of what I would call lower expression rules. It's not that there isn't truth in these forms and modalities. It's just not the truth. It is
Mm.
not highest truth. And we have to be willing to let go of lower expressions of truth if we want to move into higher expressions of truth. And sometimes that looks like, oh, that wasn't right. And it's easy to let go of because you've seen an error.
Mm.
Sometimes, and this was true for me, probably had 4 or 5 or maybe even a half dozen really critical threshold moments where I had to let go of essentially everything that I thought I knew about this work and about how I worked, and sort of start from scratch. And that's hard, especially when, you know, you're good at what you do. And I don't mean that as, you know,
Mhm.
I'm not taking that on, and, you know, everybody doesn't need to be impressed with me, because I'm speaking to other people who are also very, very good at what they do.
Yeah.
And that's why I say that when we're really good at what we do and we're helping people and people are getting better, boy, that's a big ask, to say, I'm just going to let go of all of this and see what's next. And that was compounded for me a couple times because I was also teaching a couple of these modalities.
Mhm.
And so there was a lot of, you know, ego investment in that.
Mhm.
They were good financial opportunities. You know, you could kind of, well, I could anyway. You disagreed, and I'm still mad at you about that. Just for the record, everybody, she's usually right. And that becomes frustrating at times. Um, not always, but usually. And so I could see this path for myself of, oh, I'm going to become a teacher of this technique and become known for this and bounce about the world. You know, I could have done that. I could have traveled around the world and taught and
Mm.
had a lot of fun and made a lot of money. And this is not a judgment of that. That might be what people want to do, and go for it. But that was never really my deepest calling. You know, my deepest calling has always been to see what is behind all of the forms and
Mhm.
experience that. And um, again, it brings me right back to being, you know, 12 years old and having sort of dismissed this silly fantasy from having read one too many magical books about healers and, you know, magicians and things. And suddenly I'm going, maybe that kid was onto something, you
Mm.
know. There's something deeper than all of the forms, and that's really what I'm interested
How did you experience these threshold moments? And how did you know you were in one of those?
in.
These moments where you had to abandon what you knew and come into some new
Yeah.
understanding.
Great question. What were the hallmarks of that? Terror.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of the hallmarks.
Yeah.
But also frustration. It's difficult to, sort of an energetic frustration. It would be like bumping up into an invisible wall repeatedly.
Mm.
Sometimes with the work itself, sometimes with, within myself, just sort of a bumping into what felt like actually more of a ceiling than a wall. You
Mm.
know, I would bump into what felt like a limitation, or suddenly the work didn't seem to flow as easily.
Mm.
Um, And then that was combined with this sort of nagging sense over here, this little whisper about maybe there's something else. Maybe there's, and for a while that was another form, right? And that's also the trap. And we see that, I think, in the community a lot. It's like, what's the next course you're taking?
Yep.
Oh, here's the missing piece of the puzzle. Oh,
Yeah.
here's the thing I haven't learned that I need to learn now, and that's going to make me, a great therapist, or whatever it is. And that's okay. I mean, that was, and again, I would say it's really relatively recently. I don't know, the last 6 months, year maybe. I don't know exactly, where I've really settled into recognizing that I have no desire to look at another form. Um, I have enough forms at this point to be able to be of service in whatever way I need to be, and that I'm not interested in being tempted by another form. That, oh, there's this other idea or technique or tool or whatever it is that is the missing piece to somebody's healing puzzle. Anyway, I got off track a little bit. I think for me, knowing that listening to that little voice from the universe saying, maybe there's something else going on here, and feeling myself bump into that ceiling, and combined with that sort of terror of, oh shit, am I going to have to let go of this now too? I thought this was it.
Yes.
And I already let go of what wasn't true and found this, and this was true. And well, what do you mean? This isn't true either? And really just sort of being okay with that, even in the midst of the fear and terror, and learning to recognize it for what it is, as a call to move into something deeper.
I think for me, every time I've moved from one level of understanding into another level of understanding, there's a grieving process.
Yes, for
and
sure.
a need to shift my identification with whatever the modality was that I was attached to.
Right.
And say, this
Yeah.
may not be everything, and there's more to understand.
Right. Yeah. And I think you hit on a pretty central issue, which is the identification with. And that's why I really struggle. People say, what do you do? Or, how do you work? Or any of those questions. That's really difficult to answer. A, because there's a lot that's gone into how I work. And B, because I also have put a lot of energy into not identifying with it. I remember very distinctly somebody asking me in kind of a group setting, people getting to know each other, so what exactly do you do? And I said, what exactly do I do? I have no idea. That was by far the most honest answer I could come up with. I have no idea exactly what I do. I have a pretty good sense of what I'm doing. I'm loving people and listening to them, and accessing, using various forms to access healing in some way and help that to move through and into somebody. But what exactly am I doing? I don't know. I'll let you know when I figure it out. I have a much better sense of that now, but it wouldn't jive with many people. When people ask that question, they mean it in a very sort of three-dimensional way. And what exactly I'm doing is more of a massive multi-dimensional. Really, truly, I'm listening to people and loving people. But there's a level of sort of truth to what that means that I don't think really pings with a lot of people. And they just kind of look at you funny. So,
right.
Which I get.
They want the form so they can have some kind of frame of reference for what you're offering.
Yep.
So how do you know?
Fit a rational construct. Yeah.
Sorry.
How do I know? That's okay.
How do you know? How do you know when
I don't know? Aren't you listening?
How do you know when you are the one that needs support, needs healing, needs help? Because I think as body workers, therapists, we all get exhausted. We all run into the fatigue of caring for people. What are your signs in your body or your mental state?
Fatigue is a dead giveaway for me. fatigue, if I find myself not looking for, I mean, I love my work. I
Mm.
love people in the way that I'm able to engage with them. I love people from like 9 to 6. Is that allowed? Right?
Sure.
I love people between 9 and 6. After 6, I love dogs and you. Um, so, what was the question? You distracted me.
I distracted you.
Yes.
So
How do I know when it's
how do
time to
you
take
know
care of
when it's
myself?
time to take
Yes.
care of yourself?
So if I'm feeling fatigue
Mm-hmm.
and if I'm not looking forward to work, because I do love it so much, I love people, I love being of service. If I find myself not um, enthusiastic to get into my day, it doesn't mean I'm, I've got my pom poms out every morning when I get out of bed, but it'd be awkward. It just means that there's some sense of energy pulling me into and through the day.
Mm.
If I find myself going, ugh, I don't want to get up, I don't want to go to work today, I know I'm overdue.
Mm-hmm.
I've missed something, and I don't even really like to say that I'm overdue, because what I have learned is that this might not be true for anybody, but it was certainly true for me. That I used to think of self-care as like isolated moments of like, oh, I need my 1 hour a week now to go have a therapy session or go have dream analysis or go get a massage. And that's not really what self-care is to me anymore.
Mm.
It isn't isolated moments of receiving. It is a constant listening within oneself for what you can do in each and every moment to take care of
Mm-hmm.
yourself and what is right in each moment. And so I don't really think of self-care as a doing sort of phenomenon anymore. Sometimes it looks like a doing, like when we went to the Russian banya this past weekend, which was amazing.
Yeah.
You should all try that if you have one available. Um, so sometimes it looks like, again, like a form, but
Mm-hmm.
there's some much deeper truth to self-care for me that is beyond forms. It is a way of being with oneself, and that's constant. Um, and so for me, if I again start feeling fatigue or not looking forward to my work every day, that's the dead giveaway that I've lost consciousness in that way of being with myself.
Yeah.
That is a constant state of taking care of myself. I think one of the misconceptions is that somehow these are opposite things, that you're either taking care of someone or you're taking care of yourself, and that
Mm-hmm.
these things can't happen at the same time. And that is not true. Um, in fact, I think we become much better at our work, and we become much more efficient as whatever, pick your word, healer, service provider, therapist, when our own self-care is constant and also is the priority.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I'm taking care of someone else instead of myself, and I'm abandoning myself in order to take care of someone else, then I am beginning to violate the way that energy moves through the universe,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm shutting myself down and um, bringing up blocks to healing. So it doesn't do anybody any good. So learning, I think, to navigate what that means for each person, and how we can take care of ourselves in each and every moment, I think
How
is
do
really
you
important.
take care of yourself when you're working with someone? Because I know that that's challenging for a lot of therapists. What are some things that you do?
Well, I don't know how many of them are conscious at this point. That's a good question. I'm always in a state of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean? It means I'm not really ego identifying when I'm working with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know what that means, that's a much bigger
It's
conversation, but
another talk.
it's another talk. Meditation is a great tool for that. Um, we're moving into talking about sort of the awakening process at this point, right?
Yeah.
Um, I'm just always staying connected to higher levels of awareness and consciousness, and so it's like I'm watching a play unfold in front of me. and I don't have personal ego investment, which means I don't get offended by other people. I rarely get sort of upset by something that they would share with me. Um,
Mm.
I'm not invested in their healing in a personal egoic sense. I of course want people to feel better, but I don't want them to feel better more than they do.
Mm-hmm.
From an ego, right? It's sort of a, we're in this together.
Mm.
And if you clearly don't want to feel better, I'm not going to carry the weight of that for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll help guide you and talk to you and see if we can sort of nudge you in the direction of becoming invested in your own wellness and well-being. But I don't take that on. And I think when we do take that on, it's always egocentric.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this is not a criticism, because how would I know if I weren't if I hadn't had that experience over and over and over and over again.
Right.
And it comes from a good place, a good intention, I think, of
Mm-hmm.
we just really, really want to be of service to people. We really want to help people feel better.
Mm-hmm.
But learning to recognize when it's become an ego trip, um, you know, again, a dead giveaway is if we take it personally when somebody doesn't get better, if we feel like we failed,
Mm-hmm.
or if we're upset that they didn't get the results and they're disappointed in us. And
Mm-hmm.
this takes a lot of time and energy and sort of practice being with, and a lot of our own healing. This isn't just, I don't want to give the impression that we can just flip a switch and suddenly be that way. But we can certainly be aware of these dynamics and when we are falling into them.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, when I'm working with somebody, that's probably the biggest thing in terms of taking care of myself. I don't get exhausted when I'm not making it personal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get caught up in the drama. I don't get caught up in the stories. Um, you can love and honor somebody and hear them and understand what they've been through, and have empathy for the difficulties that they've been through and what they see as their story, and honor and love them for that, and also at the same time know that they are much more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And holding the space for that, I think, is not only, again, we don't have to choose between taking care of ourselves and taking care of others.
Mm-hmm.
Holding the space for that deeper truth is not only in my experience what's best for their healing, it's also what's best for my self-care.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah,
What
I think.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that the metaphor that I've used before, and I don't claim to be the first one to use it. It's not an original idea, because none of them are. But people are stuck in the tar pit, right? And you don't help somebody out of the tar pit by jumping in with them.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that you don't have empathy and compassion and understanding. It just means you're better serving this person if you anchor yourself on the shoreline and attach yourself to a big gnarly oak tree and reach a hand out or throw them a rope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And for me, that's self-care, because when we don't do it
Yes.
that way, we're in the pit with them. And, sometimes that feels better. We go, hey, like, we're in this together. That's much better than being alone. Yeah, but we're also both in here. We're no closer to really getting out at this point. We just sort of commiserate. We feel
Yeah.
better about not being in it alone. Maybe there's something to be said for that. That's just not how I want to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what it makes me think of is you stay possibly, potentially, mostly in your masculine energy when you're holding the space for people.
Yeah, I
And
do
that's how
think that
you
that's.
feel most natural. So can I speak to that
Mhm.
a little bit more?
Please.
So for anyone not understanding what holding the space is, from my perspective, it's being a steady, grounded, impersonal presence, a spaciousness that allows people to be in their feelings, be in their experience, speak of things. And you're just there kind of steady, holding the space, keeping the container safe so that people can have whatever experience they're going to have. Um,
can
I
we
think
say
that's great.
transpersonal instead of impersonal?
Sure.
I agree with you, but I think impersonal. I think there's a I think there's a way in which that word becomes true at some point that a lot of people might not resonate.
Well, maybe
Um,
explain transpersonal so that people can
well,
get that.
so when I talked about loving and honoring somebody for what they've been through in their story, right? That's personal.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, seeing them for their deeper truth and seeing the self behind the personality and the complexes and the neuroses and the trauma, and seeing that core of them for who and what they truly are, which is eternal and permanent and perfect,
Mm-hmm.
and holding space for that to be true and knowing that within yourself, and not sort of falling into the tar pit of their personal with them. That's now the transpersonal. Yeah, what's bigger than the story and the identification with the story, um, and the personality and the ego.
Mm-hmm.
And so yes, it is of course impersonal, but I think that word has uh, connotations that many people will latch onto that aren't what we're saying.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. And I think it's obvious to you and I that we work very differently and how we hold space.
Hmm.
Um, in
Hmm.
your analogy, I think I dance around in the tar pit a little bit with people,
Hmm.
but I also completely trust myself to extricate myself from the tar pit
Yeah.
and can hold the rope and do all of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
And I,
taken
and
me a
I,
long time to not get sucked into the tar pit and stay down there.
right. And it's taken me a long time to trust dipping my toe in as well. Um, and so that's the more sort of feminine, energetic way of being with people, um, which I'm working on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not where my energy goes naturally. It's not my sort of strong suit, but there's a lot of value in it. And like with all truth, it's anytime it looks like you have to pick one or the other. It's both in some way that will transcend the rational mind, and you're not going to be able to explain it. And it's something that just has to be sort of worked with until it becomes organic. Um, so yes, I think you're describing being able to do both, to anchor yourself in that higher space while at the same time be with them in a sort of direct, compassionate, empathetic experience.
I think it's just how my body naturally is. My energy
Hmm.
field naturally tends to interact with people more very sensitively.
Hmm.
Before it was something that I couldn't get out of, though, and I had to develop
Right.
more masculine energy,
Right.
which leads me to my next question because I know
Okay.
this is one of your favorite subjects.
Oh boy.
I've actually had a lot of people ask, men ask, how can I get more in touch with my feminine energy? How can I work with that? And I know that's something that you're doing every day.
Hmm.
What would you suggest, or what have you done, and what would you suggest to other men?
Um, well, I think that sort of like when we were discussing various forms, right? I think the difficulty is the first part, which is the surrender or the letting go, right? And so there is a sense in which masculine and feminine energy seem to be opposite. They're not actually opposite as in conflict, but they are sort of. I mean, they are opposite energetically, positive pole, negative pole. So there is some truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
And if I want to, you know, if I want to go east, I have to really stop constantly. I have to be willing to not face west.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes it's that simple. I have to turn away from the west and be willing to stop doing that for a few minutes. Doesn't mean I can't turn back around at some point, but I have to be willing to explore what happens when I stop being attached to this way of thinking and being in the world.
Mm.
To me, that's the first big step, because of this sort of polarity and sense of opposite of masculine and feminine. If we're afraid of losing our masculinity, if we're afraid that it can go somewhere, or that we will lose access to it, it's going to be really difficult to access the feminine.
Mhm.
And so that means not being right all the time. It means even when logic says it's this way, holding space for some other truth
Mm.
to be present. Um, Not being so damn sure of yourself all the time, which has been something that I've done a lot of work on.
Mm.
Um, and so creating the space for the feminine to actually show up and be able to be expressed, carve some space out in there. So that's letting go of the rational mind, the intellect, forms, rigidity, certainty, black and white, right and wrong. This is true, so that thing seems to be in conflict, which means it's not true. All of that is masculine energy.
Mhm.
And we have to soften that and be willing to just show up and say, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something else going on here. Maybe there's something else about this. I think that's the first thing. For me, then practically actually getting into the feminine energy, I have probably had the most success doing dream work. Um,
Okay.
so that's been one big piece of it, and learning to um, have a relationship with the dreams and the dream material and with the energy that is presenting it, because that is the feminine in a big way,
Mhm.
especially for men. So this is for those that are interested in pursuing any of this. This is essentially Jungian um, psychotherapy, Jungian psychology, depth psychology. You'll see it referred to, and in that model, um, men, we have within us what is called the anima. Women have the animus, which is the opposite, right? So for men, we have this inner being called the anima, which is literally our other half. It is our unconscious self. And because we are men and conscious of being men, the unconscious self, the other half of our being, will present as feminine. And
Mhm.
essentially, it is feminine. The subconscious mind is feminine in both men and women. But for men, it's particularly powerful to do dream work to access feminine energy, because the face of our unconscious self will present as feminine. And so, I've joked about this with you. It's like, I got another girlfriend, and I meet her every night in my dreams. Not every night, but to really think of it that way, as I am cultivating a relationship with a woman, with this feminine figure who shows up in my dreams and has information for me of great value, and is trying to contact with me and has something to say and has a voice and wants to be seen and wants to be heard, and treating that as very serious,
Mhm.
not as some random spark of electricity that took place in the brain and loaded you with some ridiculous image. It's not how it is. It's coming from the divine feminine, from the feminine self within men. It is an intelligence. It is you. It is your other half, this entire other aspect to your being that you haven't met,
Mm.
and you can engage with it, and you can have conversations with it, and you can meditate and pray before bed and ask to have information um, conveyed to you that is important for your integration and well-being. Um, so that's been really big for me.
Mm.
And then also looking for ways to allow creative energy to move,
Mhm.
which again is also feminine.
Mhm.
the sort of unstructured creative energy. And for me, that has meant doing some drawing, which I'm terrible at.
You're not that
and
bad.
and didn't want to. It's pretty bad. I've got a great stick figure rendering of the Last Supper that I'll publish at some point.
Oh my
um,
God.
yeah, and I'm not good at, and it doesn't matter. And I resisted for a while because I thought, well, it's like I can't even translate what's in here onto paper because I'm so bad at drawing. So like, what's the point, right?
Mhm.
Well, that is the point. Right? The point is that there's a struggle going on there for this feminine aspect of my being to express itself, and it needs training. It needs to be communicated with. It needs to have a language, and so working with it because it's difficult is for me has been important. And it doesn't have to be complex. I had a dream of like the number 83 just sort of popped into a dream, and I woke up and I went, 83, what the hell? Doesn't mean anything to me. I said, all right, let's just do this. And I can't draw worth a damn, but let me just, I can draw an 83. So I sort of drew, big block letters, or numbers rather. And I managed to draw an 83. And it was only in the process of doing that, like I'm sort of drawing the 3, and I went, oh, a 3 is half of an 8. When I'm drawing, it wasn't until I had a kinesthetic creative experience of that I realized that, if you split an 8 vertically down the axis, then the right half of it is a
Yeah.
3. And if I turn it sideways, it's infinity, and it's also infinity has somehow been split. And so, don't ask me for rational conclusions from that yet. That's not really the point. The point is that something shifted in me energetically.
Mhm.
And now all of a sudden, because I engaged in that creative process, now I'm sitting with this energy of infinity being split in half. And what does that
What
look
does
like
that
and
mean?
feel like?
Mhm.
And yeah, maybe it'll never mean something that I can actually write in the English language, but it means something energetically
Mhm.
already, and that's what matters.
Mhm.
Um, Getting into our feelings, oh man, we struggle with that. And just being okay with having feelings, and finding ways to access it. As you know, one of my access points is Star Trek. Um, Star Trek
Yes.
gives me feelings. I don't know why. I have some sense of why. It's I think it's an access for me to a lot of childhood
Mhm.
energy, and it's an inner child experience. Um, and there's a lot of kind of purity to the storylines, and yeah, it just helps me access energy that got buried under being an adult at some point,
Mhm.
and I thought I had lost access to, and so I can watch some Star Trek by myself when you're gone, and allow myself to access that energy and find that there's grief tied up in there, and I don't even know what it's about, but I'm just going to sit here and cry during a phaser fight or whatever. I don't know. um, whatever we
Mhm.
can do to just access the sort of backlog of feeling toned um, energy,
Mhm.
and give it room to express and breathe without it having to be about something or mean
Mhm.
something, or certainly not to mean that there's something wrong, like, oh, I'm sad, something must be wrong. No, it's just a feeling,
Mhm.
and that's okay. And you know um, for me, changing my relationship with anger has been a big one too. I think that's a big spot for men because it's not okay for men to be angry in this world. And I'm not suggesting that we're supposed to be or should be sort of marching around yelling and screaming and ranting and being violent. And that's reactiveness.
Mhm.
That's anger sort of misdirected and misexpressed. But I think because of that, at least in my experience, man, I became really afraid of the anger that was within me.
Mhm.
Um, and was afraid to admit it was there. Certainly didn't want to tap into and feel it. Um, so I think that's big for men,
Mm-hmm.
and finding ways to sort of honor that that energy is present and have a dialogue with it and feel it in the body, without letting it translate into violence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
Thank you.
that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Well, we have time before we both have clients
Yes,
to do a meditation or offer some
sure.
special Noah magic. I love
Let-
that you just finished that Star Trek thing.
Yeah.
I know that what you want to offer is something kind of related.
Well, it is. It's kind of connected to what energetically I think has happened for me in those moments, of accessing the feminine, of getting in touch with feeling. Um, so I want to do something that, I had to come up with a name for it because it's just something that I've done instinctively over the years.
Mm.
So we'll call it a nostalgia meditation.
Okay.
Okay. So, um, before we dive into the actual meditative process, um, I want everybody to think of something for which they're nostalgic. So come up with some experience, um, where you really felt a deep sense of joy, connectedness, peace, um, love, tranquility, um, where there's a fondness. uh, And so just go ahead and so we'll start with this now. So whatever you're doing, just stop and kind of settle into your space, settle into your body. Just take a nice deep breath. Just letting all the tension dissolve from the body. Just sinking a little deeper into that space within yourself. Just allowing things to settle in the body, around the body, coming all the way into yourself now. And so I want you to call up this memory and really access the energy that's present there and notice the sensations and the feelings. And so it's sort of like, we all have a favorite food, let's say pizza. And if I ask you to tune into a memory of pizza, you can do that and you can actually sort of taste it, right? You can tune into the energetic memory of what that is. And right here in this moment, in the present time, you can almost literally taste that food. And so it's the same thing with this old memory, whatever it might be, this memory of joy, peace, love, connectedness. And so what we're going to do here is just use the memory itself as a doorway to access the energy, that taste of joy, calmness, serenity. Maybe it was an experience of expansiveness, an experience of deep love and connectivity with another person. And you're going to connect to that energy, and then you're going to let go of the story, the memory, the details, the person, the place, the event that took place. And you're just going to stay with the energy. Stay with that taste of the experience while letting go of the story of the experience. Because the story is an attachment. The story is what lives in the past. And the story is what creates this tension that we often feel in nostalgia. Nostalgia coming from Greek and Latin words that essentially mean the pain of returning home, or the longing for the return home. And so what we'll notice here is that when we let go of the story that's in the past, we're just left with that taste of joy, peace, serenity, and we can experience now that the goodness of that energy exists independent of the story. And if you lose it, go back into the story, use it as a doorway, allow that story to help you reaccess this sensation of love, contentment, and just breathing that energy into yourself now. You're going to suck that energy, that love and peace back into your being here, right now, present. You're tuned into it. You can feel it right now in this moment, which means it is not in the past with the story. Everything good, everything that is love and peace and tranquility is eternal. It cannot be lost. It cannot be stuck in the past. Only the story is in the past. And so we're going to use this nostalgia that has that pain and grief sometimes associated with it, that longing, the bittersweetness. We're going to allow that to call us back into this old experience. And then we are going to just drink up, pulling into ourselves all of the positive, loving, divine, the physical sensations that you can still tune into from that experience. And we're just going to soak that up, just allowing it to fill every cell in your body. Breathing it in, breathing it into your heart. It's been waiting there all along. Knowing and feeling the sensations and that energy present with you right here, right now, because it is eternal. It cannot be lost. And maybe it comes with some grief as you let go of that old story, or the ideas that this energy was lost to the story. That because the story is gone, that the love was gone with it. And so you might find yourself feeling sad. And if you are, allow yourself to feel sad and allow the tears to come as you grieve the idea that something was lost, as you grieve the old memory, allowing that wound to heal, and allowing you to let go of the story, grieving it to honor it as you let go of it. Maybe even grieving this revelation that what you thought was lost is not lost, that the energy has been right there waiting to be called back into you all along. And there is no emotion that is wrong as you're doing this. Just allowing this to just sort of organically run its course, reaccessing the memory if you need to grieve it as you let go of it, or to use it as a portal to access the love and contentment that you felt in that moment, and bringing that energy back with you right here into present time. And then just taking another nice deep breath. Just allowing a beautiful, soft light to wash through your entire body and energy system. Just washing through all of this energy that's returned to you now. Allowing this soft light to just soothe and comfort and heal all of this energy. Helping it to merge back into your energy system. And it's good to know that nothing of value is ever lost. And that you can easily access all of the love that you've experienced in your life and integrate it into your being here in present time whenever you want to or need to.
Wow.
And that's it.
That was lovely.
That's the Star Trek meditation.
I love it. Thank you so
So,
much. Yeah.
Yes.
So how quickly, before we go, how can people reach out to you if they have questions, or want to get in touch with you to work with you, or whatever?
People can, they can find our current website, denverpainandperformance.com. Probably the better thing would be to follow your and I's shared account on Instagram, which is She, He, We Awakening. And there will be a She, He, We Awakening website coming shortly as well that people will be able to get in touch with us. Mm-hmm. And my contact information is all on the denverpainandperformance.com website.
Okay. And for everyone watching this, I'll have that all written in the underneath in the YouTube description. So it'll be there for you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
I'll see you at lunch.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.